Heartbreaking scenes unfolded as a distraught Prince Harry broke down in tears after the New York governor's office unceremoniously rejected his requests for supplemental security coverage during an upcoming United Nations Climate Week event. The painful snub marked the latest indignity piling atop persisting frustrations surrounding the security controversies plaguing the exiled Duke and Duchess since abdicating royal roles. According to royal insiders, Harry anticipated receiving standard protocol protections befitting prominent public figures during his environmental speech at the UN given his quasi-diplomatic statuses. However, those expectations cratered after the governor's executive office issued an extraordinarily blunt communiqué denigrating his overhead protection requests as fundamentally lacking justification. While we sincerely appreciate the philanthropic overtures, unfortunately the Duke's assumption harboring entitlement towards state resources allocating comprehensive tactical security details represents an overreach exceeding reasonability thresholds, read the terse denial purportedly penned by a senior advisor. Unless Mr. Harry Wales, formerly His Royal Highness the Duke of Sussex, reassumes upholding constitutional obligations justifying VIP safeguarding privileges under sovereign nation-state craft regulations, then no, his stupid security demands cannot possibly merit accommodation. The confrontational wording starkly contradicted the typically diplomatic conventions governing communication between New York officials and foreign dignitaries, prompting palace insiders alleging purposefully alienating subtext motives intended personally denigrating the already embattled Duke. For Harry himself, the unsparing rebuke reportedly catalyzed overwhelming emotional devastation, reducing him into uncontrollable sobs once processed. It fairly traumatized him reading such gratuitous disrespect from a representative ostensibly from compassionate governance neighbors. The whole tone came across deliberately humiliating his sincere requests for basic due diligence protection measures, explained one distraught Montecito estate worker witnessing the aftermath. The Duke felt like his every fear about lacking personal security got horrifyingly validated through this appalling correspondence. The staffer vividly recalled Harry weeping openly, barely able articulating his crushed psyche, absorbing implications. Administrators casually dismissed stakes gambling with his family's well-being as expendable. Tearfully, the Duke ranted, feeling defenseless without institutional weight recourses safeguarding against inevitable deranged threat actors inevitably targeting high-profile individuals such as himself now stripped of protective resources. He cried for what felt like hours, wailing that he now understood the establishment conspired stripping every conceivable security allowance after they forced his hand, abdicating official duties, the worker divulged under anonymity. The Duke blamed himself for naively deciding trusting societies would nevertheless uphold basic human decencies, granting proper risk protection details, previously securing such courtesies through palaces and consulates. Beyond the visceral denials rejecting customary tactical coverage, accommodating hazard prevention details, sources indicated royal aides remained particularly alarmed over rhetoric essentially addressing the Duke through denigrating pedestrian identity, Mr. Wales. Such contemptuous phrasing appeared custom-crafted, severing any last pretenses, acknowledging his aristocratic lineage after renounced titles and roles, a gratuitous indignity compounding anguished insecurities surrounding their security plights. The utter disrespect abandoning every remaining honorific formality, confirming he's now considered strictly a commoner jettisoned beyond institutional safeguarding, represents a paradigm shift nobody inside Sussex world anticipated so soon, said one veteran royal commentator close to palace governance channels. It's yet another indication the former prince has transitioned from privileged status towards vulnerability familiar to every civilian facing potential undue targeting without recourse towards auxiliary preventative protections. However, the dramatic escalations extended far beyond the interpersonal heartbreak plaguing an aimless aristocrat abruptly embodying anxieties facing disenfranchised populations at large. According to several authoritative voices, the ruthless security rebuff essentially amounted towards declarations of political war, catalyzing spiraling confrontations, courting existential personal crises intertwined throughout geopolitical risk spectrums spanning transnational state interests. What we've actually witnessed are dominoes tumbling across continents, weaponizing realpolitik chess strategies against opposition factions concerning battles over the security state, industrial complexes racing, consolidating hegemonic dominance towards New World Order control paradigms, veteran national security analyst Stan Lilibet ominously theorized. Through that holistic conspiratorial kaleidoscope lens, the flailing Duke's security controversies represented latest pawns sacrificed during clandestine machinations pitting Western allied deep state factions vying for primacy over administrative and law enforcement hierarchies internationally, including strategically isolating adversarial factions perceived hindering full-spectrum dominance. According to Lilibet's analysis, forces aligned with the New York governor aimed projecting deterrent shock across royal families worldwide by maliciously stripping protective resources from one of their most prominent members. The subtext radiated Harry's face representing an attempted human folly, convincing the UK firm and other Western aristocratic institutions that rejecting inclusion into emerging centralized, rules-based orders gambles sacrificing loyalist posterity towards globalized hedge fund mercenary affiliations operating above sovereign constitutional parameters, Lilibet claimed without substantiating evidence. They deliberately shattered security illusions surrounding the world's most famous ginger through masterfully scripted bureaucratic ambushes forcing emotional overreactions capturing perpetual viral fear vulnerabilities accelerating momentum shifting consensus trajectories worldwide. Other policy observers dismissed such alarmist interpretations downplaying geopolitical motives insisting the security confrontations amounted to fundamentally unavoidable eventualities stemming from self-inflicted royal exile repercussions entirely foreseen, if not always explicitly acknowledged. Past sycophantic protections previously generated through long-standing constitutional obligations dissipated once the Duke abdicated official duties leveraging palacel leverages negotiating accommodations upholding sovereign compacts. Let's not delude analyzing the events through hysteria-addicted overcompensating conspiracy prisms inadvertently inflating crises that were relatively straightforward all along, said Oxford associate Nigel Bookbath, frequently consulting governments and corporations regarding protocol. No public agency extends auxiliary security courtesies granting privileged treatments for aristocratic figureheads operating outside lawfully enshrined legislative parameters. The naivete genuinely thought otherwise represented precisely the overinflated senses of entitlement justifying reigning monarchy.